Hey guys, M83 here from Not So Daily Gaming. We're back with another video. Figured I would show you how to use the Boeing 777 autopilot. Fairly simple, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're just going to go ahead and turn it on here. Auto start. Really important that you actually set your altimeter to the proper setting. I'm just going to put it at 0 at this point, just to keep things simple. I happen to know... So pull up a map here. I happen to know that we're going to fly to LFPO because that's a close by airport. So we're going to pull that up. LFPO, excuse me. There we go. And we're going to go to runway 6. And the reason for that is not that it is the best runway, but because it is the runway that happens to have a ILS Category 6. The thingamacalli, I don't know what to call it. ILS reading. So if we look on here, if we look at the data for it, if it will give me it, no it won't. Okay, but basically the runway, wow, it really doesn't want to give me information. So see how this is category 1 here, and that one's category 2? Though I know happen for a fact that this is category 3, which is the highest category, and that's going to give us with the most accurate landing. Eventually it'll switch over there. I'm not too worried about how that's all going to work out, but let's go and put down our flaps to about 5, go and turn off our parking brake, and we are ready to go. But actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and bring our autopilot up to there and arm it. So, good to go. We're going to cruise at about 4,000 feet, should be fine. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Go ahead and throttle up, and we'll get going here. Will be a very easy takeoff. Fairly fast acceleration. Again, don't forget to rotate only when it says VR, when you're above this line here, else you will fall like I'm doing right now because I intentionally did that. But that's what you want to do. Okay, gear up. We're good to go. And I think we can engage autopilot. Yes, good to go. And we're going to go LNAV because that's fine. And we don't want to climb that fast. We want to climb at about 1,500 feet per minute. And we're good to go. We can put our flaps up. And we're flying. We're cruising. This is a fairly straightforward flight. So what we can do is once we get up to altitude, we'll go and kind of speed past the boring part, which is just the cruise altitude. I just want to show you really how to auto land a Boeing 777. Yes, that. So let's go ahead and get the time settings out. We'll go and do ×2 simulation rate. This really puts a strain on my computer, and it gives me incredibly terrible frame rate. But it also means that this flight happens 2 times faster, and you get to listen to me talk for half as long. So in the long run it works out, and we'll go with it. So cruising along here at a good 2 frames per second is what it's telling me it's getting, but I don't believe it. I think that actually, I think that's a bug if I remember correctly. So you can't see it, but down here in this corner it's saying that I'm only getting 2 frames per second. And the reason for that is that when you set this simulation rate to do, it's doing twice the calculations per second. So in actuality, I'm getting a lot higher than that, but it doesn't want to calculate that for me. So like if I reset it instantly, I'm back all the way up to 15 frames per second, no problem. There's the Eiffel Tower out of interest there. But we will keep cruising, no problem. Once we get within 5 miles of our first waypoint, I'll show you we do really need to descend pretty quickly here. Generally, the rules are, so I'm not going to cover, so iTouch did a great new change to this autopilot. And he added, if you look in the autopilot settings, he added these 2 buttons. He did a whole bunch, he completely retweaked it. Like, he changed a whole bunch of stuff, rewrote a whole bunch of stuff, so props to him. It's amazing the work he's done and all this how smooth these landings are. It's really impressive. But just as a general rule for kind of what you want to do, is you want to, like where it says 4,300 feet, you want to be below that generally, is a pretty good rule to follow by the time you reach that point, just because it can get kind of problematic. Yeah, so I'm not using VNav. He did a lot of work. iTouchPods did a whole bunch of work for VNav. However, I've kind of found that glitchy. I'm not very good at it. So we'll leave it the way it is for now, which is totally fine. Meanwhile, let's make sure that we aren't... Okay, so let's just switch. I'm switching the second radio just so it doesn't interfere, and I think we're good now, right? Yeah, so now we're just listening only to this runway's radio, which is good. Okay, we're about... when we get this, that's 7.5 miles. When we get to about 5 miles, nautical miles, we'll go ahead and stop simulation rate, slow it down, and begin our descent. Again, just if this was a really, really long flight, you'd want to make sure that by the time you got to your first waypoint, you were at or below about 4,000 coming into the runway. So we'll go ahead and slow down to normal time. We're going to go down to about 3,000 feet. Flight level change it, why not? Make it easy. Let the airplane do all the work. I don't have to calculate anything. It'll just do it at whatever rate it is would like to, which makes my job beautifully simple. So we'll let it do that. It's actually having us go on a pretty fast descent rate, which is interesting, at 1,700 feet per minute, which is totally fine. Okay, coming up on our first waypoint here, I might cheat a little bit more. Again, because I want this to be a really quick video, and not something you guys all have to sit through. So we'll kind of go here. My computer can handle it, no sweat. So we'll do that. Okay. Looking pretty good. Okay. So here is, I'm actually going to go down to this level because we're going to start slowing down. It's actually even a little bit late. So we're going to go put one flap of thing of flaps down. We'll actually go ahead and put 2. We'll go ahead and slow down to about 180 miles. Knots, jeez. 180 knots. Generally, you want to be between about 180, 160 knots is a good landing speed. I tried to do about 170 by the time you're on the ground. This is a pretty... I'm slowing down pretty early here. It is honestly up to you when you feel like that's necessary. As long as you're below, by the time the autopilot is going to really say, hey, time to land, you're below 1,800 knots, I believe. Haven't really looked into the code that much, but I know that has changed. I think one of the things that has changed between the old version of the autopilot code and iTouchPod's new version is the fact that there are several requirements that I've kind of run into before it would be willing to let me try an auto land, which is number 1, low speed. Number 2, I think the landing gear have to be down. And number 3, I think you have to have a good amount of flaps. And so I'll show you. It's actually fairly simple to figure out if you have enough flaps on the Boeing 777. Excuse me. Geez, I have a hard time with that. And so really simple, and I'll show you that when we get there. So we're just about to do onto our kind of final turn onto final here. Here we go. Okay, so by the time we get to this waypoint, we need to be at or below 2,200, basically is what it's telling me. So we're just going to go 2,100, why not? And we're going to do this manually, just so we have a little bit of control over what it looks like. Worth noting that automatically it did find, because we are on that localizer, we're on that correct frequency, went ahead and found that for us. So once this turn kind of is more complete, we'll go ahead and set this to localizer so we don't have to worry about that at all. I can already see the runway right there ahead of us. Okay, that's close enough. So click localizer, it'll automatically figure out, hey, this is where I need to be. This is what it'll look like, and we'll be good to go at this point. Okay, so we're basically lined up with the runway here. Good to go. Oh, there it is. Okay, so there is the there's the glide slope. Sorry, we're gonna go down a heck of a lot more at about 1,100 feet per minute. The reason for that is because we want to make sure that when the autopilot engages, so we're gonna slow this down, put some flaps because we're speeding up. When the autopilot engages, we want to be at or below this point. So we want to get close enough to the runway, and at this point, if we clicked approach, I don't think it would work. Yeah, see, so it's saying, hey, you do all the work to get us lined up to this point. Okay, so back to what I was saying previously. If I actually, sorry, so this will be fine. I did this backwards. You need to go faster if you're down here, and because it means the glide slope is below you. I'm sorry, I messed that up. So we're slowing down fairly here, but notice how this is turned green now. So we can we'll go ahead and we're close enough once we get within about 5. So this is where it's saying, hey, this is where we're going to touch down. Go like right there. Okay, perfect. So it's going to find it hopefully. Once we get within about 5 nautical miles, yeah, we'll just go and put the flaps there. We're going to go down to another thing of flaps just to keep it simple. Okay, so here it's going to, once it gets right on this glide slope here, it's just going to start basically diving. You'll see it kind of happen. Yeah, so there it goes. Instant land 3. So once it kind of got within that close range, saying, hey, here it's going to do a rollout and flare. It's saying land 3, so that's the highest level of land. It's basically totally autonomous. I don't have to do anything. It'll stay in the center line of the runway, and it'll also flare the landing once it gets down there, which is great. So we'll go and first view this landing from inside the cockpit, and then once we have completely stopped, we'll go ahead and go back and do that. So let's go ahead and arm auto brake, speed brake, sorry, which is you just press the equal sign, and then we're going to turn auto brake to 2, which is totally fine, not too big. If you go max, it will basically, if you're on a dry surface where you don't need a lot of braking stuff, it will automatically, basically you won't, your brakes will overheat. Is basically what I'm trying to say, sorry. So as we're coming in here, perfectly on glide slope, our altimeter and radar altimeter seem to be kind of matching up. They're close enough to where the autopilot can kind of deal with it. It was expecting it, basically. There's a difference between them, and it can kind of deal with that. Ooh, big lag spike there. We're low enough also, we can kind of slow down here, that the autopilot is able to do this landing successfully. With we're enough above idle to where it can take off, but also slow down if it needs to. We're all good to go. So here you see it's kind of pulling up here at the end, and it's going to do a nice gentle flare. It's coming down here, and watch it. Okay, so one of the wheels definitely touched first, but that's okay. And we're kind of on the right of the center line, but for an autopilot landing, again, I didn't do anything. It's doing a great job. I actually haven't touched the controls at all in this whole landing, and it's going to be able to stop by the end of the runway. I haven't even turned on reverse thrusters because of auto brake 2, although if it was a shorter runway, I would turn on those reverse thrusters. But we're already before 30 knots, so I'm going to go ahead and press and hold on the brakes for a second to disengage the auto brakes. Turn them off and come to a halt here. There we are. Beautiful. So that was a wonderful landing. I just set the parking brake, and we can disengage autopilot. And so let's go and take a look from the outside. That was a beautiful landing. That would pass, in my opinion. So if we go to instant replay, so let's go and go over to the helicopter view. Can we do like chase view maybe? Oh yeah, there we go. Let's get a nice view of the wheels. We're gonna skip over to where we were landing. Oh. So we'll see that. Oh my goodness. Can I turn that off quickly? Sound configuration. Oh, it does require a restart. Great, wonderful. Okay, so we'll just kind of turn the desktop audio down so you can barely hear it and ignore the person talking. So we're coming upon the runway here, kind of zoom in here. Nope, I'm just muting it because it's going to get too annoying for you guys. Okay, you can still hear me talking though, which is good. And we'll go ahead and come in here. Okay, so we're coming along, nice. It's doing this again all automatically. I have not touched the controls basically at all, other than like the actual flight controls. So here we are. Okay, it's nice landing. Wheels are all ready to go. So here you can kind of see it slowing down, doing this little flare sort of a bob. It's pulling up, and then voila. So it goes and puts down the left wheel first, and then the right wheel comes down, and then it does the center wheel pretty hard. And I'm not entirely sure. I think it's trying to offset. My guess is there is a wind of some sort coming from this direction, so it's from left to right. The wind is, and so it's trying to offset that by kind of get to the center of the runway, but it couldn't. That's probably the reason for that. But if it's a totally calm day, again, the autopilot landing would be totally smooth. But there it is. So hopefully that was fairly straightforward for you guys. And so thank you guys all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye bye.